For better or for worse, Black Ops 4's changed the game in quite a number of different ways. We ended up seeing things like more constant events, more constant updates, whether or not they were something that brought along everything you liked. The frequency at which is undoubtedly faster than that of previous years where we would get, say, 4 maps every 2 months, and that would be the only updates we end up getting. We saw things like those seasonal events come and go, we saw things like map changes to Blackout, and all things considered. But on the same token, there's a lot of stuff that we didn't see within Black Ops 4 that now 331 days after launch, it's kind of like, why didn't that ever happen? And being that it is so far past that launch, and we're so close now to Modern Warfare's launch, the 2019 Call of Duty, it's kind of safe to say this will never happen. So today, I don't necessarily want to take a ranting perspective of it, but rather a retrospective look at some of the missed opportunities of Black Ops 4. Some of the stuff that I've just been thinking about, and I'm like, why was that never added? Not necessarily like in an angry way, but more so just confusion. I mean, some of these things are some of the coolest features that were there in previous variations of not only just the Black Ops franchise, but other things that have compounded and become great pieces we'd consider from the Call of Duty franchise that never made their way into Black Ops 4, though I think they could have worked out tremendously well. That said, let's start with some of the staples from Black Ops 3, some of the things that really worked well in the past Black Ops game, and by simple natural assumption going into Black Ops 4, we kind of figured that, well, it worked really well in that game, why wouldn't it make a return? It was a fan favorite, why wouldn't it come back? First thing of that being hero gear. I guess perhaps the first red flag that we should have seen coming was based off of the reveal build of Black Ops 4, where we got to play and we learned that through discussion with developers that only 1 specialist per time would be available per team. So you couldn't have, say, 2 prophets, you couldn't have 2 ruins, you couldn't have 2 seraphs. Later on, you ended up seeing that things like TDM allowed for regular match play of 2 specialists per, but that was still it. Black Ops 3, you had the ability to run if you wanted to, not that it would be the greatest or most tactical thing, to run all players on the same team as the same specialist. And this was primarily due in part because, well, there were challenges associated with each specialist. You had the ability to end up getting ultimately all the way up to what is hero gear, which was the gold camo equivalent of character uniforms and outfits, but the first red flag again kind of came back to you wouldn't have the ability to choose really when you wanted to all of the time. If somebody connected and beat you to that, you wouldn't be able to play as that ruin, that seraph, that crash. But even still, time went on and we saw a launch come and go, and still no hero gear. There was no challenges associated with each individual specialist. Personally, what I thought was interesting about the hero gear from Black Ops 3 was that it added another avenue to grinding. Sure, it might not have been everyone's favorite cup of tea, but whenever you completed Dark Matter, whenever you completed Master Prestige and you just started going up to level 1000, you still had another thing to grind out if you so wanted to, that being the hero gear. To master absolutely everything, you had to go through your specialists and unlock each individual hero piece of the uniform. It just added a little bit more for the player to do, and it was something that a lot of players were looking forward to in Black Ops 4, but never came around. Another thing that was kind of a missed opportunity was something Black Ops 4 actually flirted with to begin with, that being contracts, but not necessarily in the way that we see them now, instead more so like some of the special contracts that we saw within Black Ops 3. Now granted, there were things like your daily and your weekly contracts, which the weekly contracts gave you a Blackjack token, in which you could end up unlocking Blackjack for an hour of in-game playtime. The dailies ended up giving you some XP and some crypto keys, but the specials were what really got some people interested in the game and grinding out the game again. While there were things like you could end up getting more Blackjack tokens, you could end up getting things like calling card sets, the big ones that a lot of people were really excited about were that of things like the triple play, the total victory, and the grand slam. These would task you with getting 75 wins, 100 wins, and 125 wins respectively, depending on which contract you ended up activating and which one came around at the time, and would give you rewards like a ranged weapon bribe and a melee weapon bribe, a ranged weapon bribe and a supply drop bundle, sometimes a ranged weapon bribe, a melee weapon bribe, and a supply drop bundle. And then the grand slammed was that coup de grace, that one that for 125 wins you actually got a ton of stuff with this. You had a 3 of a kind weapon bribe, which was 3 weapons that guaranteed you at least 1 ranged and 1 melee weapon dupe protected, and that third one could be new, it could be a dupe, but you had 3 weapons granted at that point. You had 1 limited edition camo that came along with that one. You had 20 no dupe rare supply drops and 20 liquid divinium. So these things offered up a huge reward in terms of a hefty grind, sure, but it was something that never really came to Black Ops 4 as we may have thought. Sure, you can argue that the contraband stream sort of replaced this, where at the very end of a contraband stream you got a weapon, or earlier on, you even had 3 weapons per contraband stream, but especially as of lately in the introduction of the contract system, since then, we've only seen a weapon bribe in tiers and everything else being pushed out in that paid format, whether that be via a special offer in the shop, whether that be a mini pop-up event that sure is nice to see it's free, but it's something that only lasted in the case of recently 5 days, so not many players may have gotten it entirely. This activate when you want, discard when you want it, and of course, the bigger bundles being something you could just work towards separately on your own time. That was something that was a great help to Black Ops 3, and at the time, a system that just really was not that great for how DLC weapons and how DLC content in general was parted out. So with that being one of the more redeeming factors, if you could call it that, I'm surprised that it didn't at least make its way over once or twice within Black Ops 4 in the way of a special contract. One thing that honestly I am very surprised didn't happen throughout the year more than it already did was a community contract. We saw that we had one a couple of months back for the Galil, or I guess it's called the Grav in Black Ops 4, I guess due to licensing rights maybe, but regardless, we saw the Grav introduced from Blackout and Zombies into multiplayer because of a community contract that was going on during one of the operations. Now, while this isn't necessarily exclusive something from Black Ops 3 that was a big fan favorite, it did have a lot of stuff in Black Ops 3 actually, more than in Black Ops 4, community contracts that did give the players something to grind towards and a community to come together and work towards one common goal, but it wasn't exclusive just to Black Ops 3. And with this being something that over the years fans have really enjoyed, whether that be from Black Ops 3, whether that be from World War II, wherever you may have found those rewards to be the most rewarding, I'm really surprised that we didn't see more of these within Black Ops 4. I mean, there were definitely a ton of throwback weapons you could do. I could easily think that the community would be way happier if you put, say, the Locust as a community contract reward instead of just putting it in supply drops. And things also still exist in the game that aren't an MP. We have the MP40 from Blackout as well as Zombies once again that still never made its way over into multiplayer, and at this point I'm not really expecting it to, but we could have done the same thing for literally nothing new in terms of how that development would work. You wouldn't have to sacrifice anything because it would literally be there in the game. You just have to port it over. That would be the easiest one for me, and I just don't understand why that one never happened. But the community contract was something that the community as a whole really enjoyed because, again, it gave you something for simply playing. It was another avenue, even if minuscule, something to reward the player for jumping on every day to chip away at that goal and have something new to look forward to at the very end of that. It was just a fun little way to bring the community together, and truthfully, I don't understand why it wasn't introduced more within Black Ops 4. Now, the next one is definitely something that you can easily argue as well because it's for the bottom line. It's for that dollar that they're gonna make because of it. But my mind is genuinely baffled to think that we didn't have any sort of in-game currency like a crypto key, like a salvage, like an armory credit to counterbalance any monetary specific supply drops. And I'm looking exactly at the reserve crates. If you take a look at it, yes, you can end up grinding out your simple reserve cases, but the crates, there is nothing that you can do to save up to get those outside of the dupe protected crates, which were only added in 8 months or so into the game's launch, and that's probably generous. It's probably longer than that. It might have been around the 10-month mark, but regardless, you don't have any way to organically get a supply crate outside of putting in 200 COD points per drop. Black Ops 3, for as horrible as it was for its supply drop contents and the system that it had in place in terms of the base of it, where everything was thrown into one loot pool, where there was attachment variants that muddied up the loot pool, calling cards, all that kind of stuff. And you know what? Surprisingly similar to what we have in Black Ops 4's loot pool system, but at the time you at least had 10 crypto keys to end up getting a common supply drop, and a rare supply drop cost 30 crypto keys. You could grind those out and it'd be something you could end up getting 3 items per each, not 1 or 3 like you see in Black Ops 4, but it also had the ability to end up organically getting that better chance supply drop. And then what made it even better is the fact that if you ended up getting duplicates, you could burn those for even more in-game currency. You could then try your luck again on those things. So to me, my problem from day one with these whenever they were introduced in Grand Heist was the fact that there was no counterbalance. There was no way to get those items again, now outside of a dupe protected crate, which is now 6 reserve crates. In other words, at the minimum, probably about 4 hours of in-game playtime. There was no way to get these crates outside of putting cash into it. And I personally think that that was a missed opportunity to reward those that dedicated their time to the game and grinded it out. And the final thing, well, that's just going to be one that we'll never see, and is something that still, I don't understand why it was even said that it was going to be coming, was factions. Factions within zombies. Now, honestly, we know very little about what would work out here with this. It was teased all the way back at the reveal in May of last year, ended up being teased pre-launch, ended up being teased post-launch, until eventually they even said it was coming the next operation, until it just never happened. And so that's something in and of itself that I think could be a great discussion on its own. But this ended up at its most conceptual core trying to offer zombies players new ways to experience and to earn loot throughout the system. As we know, the contraband stream doesn't actually work with zombies because of probably the fear of AFKing. So it was going to be a system put in place that would sort of counterbalance that and allow zombies players to grind out in their own right. And one of the key things was to increase the amount of reserve cases and tier skips you could end up getting for that. But with a contract update, it was something that maybe counterbalanced that a little bit and filled that void, but you never got to play around with the intended extra layers to the zombie storyline and universe. You never got to play as Bloodfaith, Tempest Novi, Dustborn, the First Legion. You never got to play around with the stuff that would showcase deeper depths of the storyline and what we'll see coming out of that. And honestly, it's something that's so perplexing. It had so much potential from what was described, but it just never happened. So whether or not you can classify that, I guess, as a missed opportunity, I certainly can, because I feel like it would have been a really cool addition for zombies fans and players. We just never got it. Regardless, that's where we're gonna wrap it up. That is a couple of things here that were just racking my mind as of recently, and things that I was just thinking about that I just didn't understand why they weren't in here. They were just such cool pieces of gameplay from other titles, different concepts that could have worked out greatly, or some things that, like the community challenges, we even saw but only saw once. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Is there anything in particular that I missed? Anything that you guys would like to add to this list? Anything that you wish would have came to the game? Maybe say factions, and maybe to explore that a little bit. Whatever it is, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, but hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to drop a like down below, and of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Call of Duty. Modern Warfare is right around the corner, and I cannot be more excited for it. I'm so stoked to jump into the beta and, of course, the full launch a little later on, but if you guys are interested in any of that kind of stuff, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. And if you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best place to get connected outside of YouTube. Practically on both those. So if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. But let's send out of the way. Thank you guys all so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.